Okay, well, let's get started. Welcome to this workshop. We have a little bit under an hour together before your lunch break. I hope you all enjoyed your morning. I'm rather excited to be here to chat about your personal brand. And I've basically titled this, Why Building a Personal Brand is as Important as Changing Your Pants. So here's the deal. The way I like to present, I'm great if you interrupt, if you have direct messages that you want to send me, if you want to ask a question, feel free to use the Q&A and ask questions publicly or to me directly. I like to have fun. So if you want to put on your cameras, if you want to have a conversation back and forth, I'm completely cool with that. Let's just talk about what we're going to discuss today. So in today's workshop, the goal is to talk about why a personal brand matters, what actually even is a personal brand at the end of the day. We're going to touch a little bit on imposter syndrome, confidence, and that fake it until you make it mentality. And then I'm going to leave you with 10 tips for developing your own personal brand. And these will be your homework. So if you don't already have a notebook, go grab a notebook and a pen because we do only have this hour together. So we're going to move through things rather rapidly. So who the heck am I? So my name is Terri-Ann Richards. If you aren't already aware of who I am, I was born and raised in St. John, New Brunswick, and I am a serial entrepreneur. What the heck does that even mean? Well, I started in business when I was 18 years old. I like to joke that I have my MBA from the entrepreneurial global streets. I've had 8 different companies over the course of my career in all different industries, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that matters. In today's world, what I do is I'm a business strategist and a leadership development coach working with leaders and entrepreneurs globally on helping them realize their full potential. I am a best-selling author. I am on book number 2, so second book should be coming out this year. I like to say that I'm a rebel. All that means is I like to paint outside the lines. I like to do things slightly unorthodox. I like to think outside the box. I think that's one of the qualities of an entrepreneur. And I believe not only business owners are entrepreneurial. So I think anybody who has a career that they are both passionate about and feel like they have a purpose within has that entrepreneurial drive. And sometimes you have to be a little bit rebellious to get things done. I'm a mom of 2. I have a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old. And yes, you were reading that correct. I'm a grandma. I know I don't look like I should be a grandma, but I said I have a 20-year-old and she made me a grandma. So there you have it. So let's just jump right in. So what actually is? So question for you. Have you ever Googled your name? And if you haven't, I encourage you all to Google your name. And if you have, what did you see? What are the images? What are the articles that show up? What are the stories that show up? Basically, at the end of the day, if I were to just leave you with this of a snapshot, your personal brand is the mixture of how you see yourself, how others see you. And that mixture in between is your personal brand. So whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, you have a personal brand. So what you share on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, the blog that you had 10 years ago that you think is hidden that somehow is still alive, all of that encapsulates what is your personal brand. And the reality of it is some of it you control and some of it you don't. But a personal brand is who you are at your core, right? It's a combination of what you value, your characteristics, your traits. A lot of times your personal brand determines the career choices you make, and it's sort of the way that you naturally gravitate towards different things. It drives your actions, your reactions, your interests. But here's the deal, and this is why this image is here. It drives what other people think of you. So here's the cool thing that so many people say is, well, I don't care what other people think. And I'd love to tell you that it doesn't matter what other people think of you. But if you're like most, like me, you want to go up in your career. You want to get promotions. You potentially want to meet your future spouse. all of that matters in terms of the reputation that you have out there. Those relationships that you've built over the last 10, 15, 20 years all have a reputation attached to them, and i.e. that is your personal brand. So these two individuals, Oprah, Richard Branson, these are individuals with very public, very large personal brands, but they weren't built overnight, right? If you look in the history of Oprah or Richard Branson, these were individuals that at the very beginning of their career, nobody knew who they were, nobody knew what they stood for, and they weren't the billionaires that they are today. But over time, because they stood for something, because they showed up on a regular basis the same way in front of the public eye, they've built these enormous personal brands, right? So let's talk about a scenario. And I sort of want to paint a picture for you of what a personal brand is. So take a look at this photo. So just picture you're sitting at a conference table with coworkers. You're talking about a project you're working on together. And without notice, one of your senior advisors, senior leaders walks into the room and sits down beside you. What are you thinking? How does this person make you feel? Are you comfortable with this person? Everybody has somebody that they can probably think of that just walked into the room and sat beside them. Does the mood in the room completely change when this person enters? The answer really lies in the personal brand of that senior leader. This person carries a perception, a persona, if you will, or a vibe that you feel the second they walk in the room. This is their personal brand. Scenario number 2. Picture the same conference room, same coworkers, the senior leader's already in there, your peers are already in there, but you're not. Now you walk into the room. What are your coworkers thinking when you walk into the room? How do you hold yourself when you walk into the room? Does the mood change to the positive or to the negative when you enter? This is where the light needs to be shown on why a personal brand is so important. You see, knowing what other people feel and think about you is critical to understanding what is your personal brand. Understanding your personal brand, though, it requires you to pay attention to what's happening when you walk into a room, to pay attention to how people react to you when you walk into a room. And I know right now we more or less walk into virtual rooms, but the same thing applies. How do people react when you walk in? Do people pay attention when you're walking in? And this requires you to pay attention, pay attention to how people are reacting to you, but it also requires you to ask some tough questions. So ask questions to people that you work with, to senior leaders. What is the perception that people have of you? Is that landing with everybody? Good. So here's the deal. We live in a really virtual world, especially over the course of this last year with the pandemic. And basically the way it works is for 24/7, 365 days a year, the world is always on, right? It's always on. All of the images and articles and posts that you have done are on 24/7. And the chances are people are looking through your profile on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and wherever else you exist while you're sleeping. And unfortunately, you don't always get to dictate the perception that they're taking in based on those posts. It's not any different than when you've walked into a networking function or a classroom or a career fair where people have a perception of you. Now people can create a perception of you based on everything that's on the net. And it's important. It's important in such a huge way, but I'm not going to share that just yet. So the reality is your personal brand is what other people say about you when you leave the room. It's your professional reputation. Everything you put on social media, down to the conversations you're having at the water cooler, affect your personal brand. Here's the deal. A lot of people will come back to me usually when I have this conversation and say, but my social media is private, especially if it's posts that you're doing on Facebook. And so you should be able to say whatever you want in terms of your opinions, your beliefs, and all of that. And my answer to you is yes, you should. However, unless you have a Facebook that's private and nobody follows you, it doesn't matter. The issue is we live in this world where there's the 6 degrees of separation. And even though I may not be friends with you on social media, I may know somebody who's friends with you on social media, and I may be able to connect them to you, take a look at your profile, and make a decision instantly of what I believe your personal brand is. And the question for you is, do the things that you post on social media, do the things that you have out there on in the public eye or the private eye, do they depict who you really want to show up as? So here's a question for you, and I get this one all the time. What if you don't agree with the perception that's out there? What if you don't like the current personal brand that you have? And this is where it's sort of fun to reinvent. So I want to share a little bit of my story. So I started in business when I was 18 years old. I think earlier I said to you all that I was 18 when I started in business, and I'm 37 now. I've had 8 different companies over the course of my career. I've reinvented myself a few times. I haven't owned the same type of business every single time. My very first business was in manufacturing. I moved over into retail, and then I switched over into real estate, travel, consulting, and now I'm in coaching. And the reality is at each stage of my life, I had a different persona, right? When I think back into my early 20s going into business, I said to you, I didn't have a university degree that gave me the qualifications to be a business owner. I just walked into business and started, failed forward, if you will. And when I think back into my early 20s, the persona that I had was one of a little bit more, I didn't smile as much. I was a little bit more of a tougher personality. And I can remember being about 25 years old, going to a networking function, and individuals, I was having a side conversation, and somebody said to me, I would have approached you a year ago, but I thought you were rather intimidating. And I thought, well, that's strange, because I'm not very intimidating. I'm very fun, very easy to get along with. But the persona that I had when I walked into a room, because I didn't smile a lot, was that I was a little bit more serious, a little bit more standoffish. And so that was the personal brand that I was carrying, right? And so that information led me to go, oh, okay, so when I walk into a room, I need to smile a little bit more. I need to approach people, because sometimes people are intimidated to approach me. And over time, that personal brand changed. So the personal brand that you have is a mixture of, again, how you walk into a room, the personality that you have, but it also is obviously the skills and qualifications you have. If somebody were to describe me in my 20s as an entrepreneur, they would have said I was really good at operations, right? Because I was in the very operational roles within my organizations that I ran. That I was very ambitious, because I always was owning, 2 or 3 companies at a time. Whereas today, people would say something different about me, because I have reinvented myself. So for those of you who are sitting there thinking, well, I don't know if I have a personal brand, maybe the personal brand is just a lot of your personal stuff, and you want to switch it so that it's more professional. The beauty of social media is, it moves at the speed of light. You have the ability to reinvent yourself by just showing up in a different light on a regular and consistent basis, so that over time, when people look at you through the lens of social media, they will have that different perception, and you will own the narrative of what it is that is your personal brand, right? So why is a personal brand important? And, again, people will ask this question to me. They'll ask, well, why is it important that I have a personal brand? I work for XYZ company. Well, the reality is, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is on average, people are staying in their career positions 2 to 3 years max, and then they're pivoting. They're switching to different organizations, or they're looking for promotions within their own organization. So the number one reason I will tell you why having a personal brand is so darn important is it leads to opportunities. I've had 8 companies in 16 years. At least 5 of the organizations that I have been a part of where I've partnered or I've been given an opportunity to purchase has been because of the reputation I have, and that people went out and found me and had a conversation with me and connected me with the right people so that I could be a part of those organizations. They didn't just randomly fall on my lap, right? It leads to opportunities for potential connections for new jobs. If you're somebody who's looking for a new job, if you have a good personal brand, if you're a really good coder, if you're really good at this specific space, and you make sure that people know about it and you talk about it, then by nature, people are going to go out and talk about it as well, right? So job interviews, internships, speaking engagements. The reason that I'm here today is not because I applied for it. It's not because I asked for it. It's because of my personal brand. Somebody who was a part of the organizing committee reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do this workshop. That's the power of a personal brand. It also opens up the door for networking opportunities. I don't know how to say this any better beyond the fact that your network, in other words, the people that you're connected with on a regular basis, equals your net worth. Let me say that again. Your network, the people that you're connected with, equals your net worth. In other words, the ability for you to have success in your career, in your business, in your life, all comes back to the people that you connect yourself with. And having a good, positive personal brand is a part of that. Having a good, positive personal brand helps you, without a doubt, with your promotions and for people who are in business with partnerships. 70% of employers use social media to screen candidates. Anytime I do a hire, I look people up. Why? Because I want to make sure that their core values are aligned with mine and the brand. I want to make sure that the way that they show up on social media is aligned with the image that I want for my company, right? We want to make sure that what's on your resume matches what I'm seeing on social media, right? That there's not a conflict. And in a world of extreme competition, having a really positive and strong personal brand helps you stand out. So for those of you right now who are sitting there thinking, okay, well, that's great. These are all like great reasons of why I should have a personal brand. Remember that as we get going through this conversation, I will be giving you tips on how to grow your personal brand if you think you don't have one right now. Here's the fun stat. 43% of current employers are checking you out on social media as you work for them. Again, we check you out to make sure that you're a good fit, but then we need to make sure that you stay a good fit and that things are, on the up to up. Again, so many people, they come back and they say, well, my social media is private. Again, if you have more than one person on your social media, there's an ability for other people to see what you're posting, even if your boss is not on there. So again, always make sure that what you're putting out on the internet, on social media, is stuff that you are okay with the world seeing. If you are okay with them seeing, then keep doing what you're doing. The other cool thing from a business perspective is good personal brands of my employees actually put a spotlight on my company. Like if somebody over here who works for me has an awesome personal brand, it actually shows really well on my company. Fair? Awesome. So I told you I wanted to touch a little bit, and I'm not going to go too deep on this, but I want to basically call out the elephant in the room. A lot of individuals that I work with, that I coach, when we're talking about building a personal brand and really putting themselves out there, especially if they are not an entrepreneur, they don't always understand what's the value in creating a personal brand, right? Of course, an entrepreneur would do that, but why, if I am an employee, why would I do that? And so I just talked a little bit of the importance of that and the value of that. But most of the time, people will come back to me with, well, who the heck am I? to create a personal brand. There's a lack of confidence. And there's this word that I'm sure you've all heard of, which is imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome, I mean, you can go Google it, so I'm not going to go real far into describing it. But basically, it's that feeling like I don't belong, like I'm a fraud, or that what people think of me, like, so if people think I'm here, I believe of myself as really there. You're thinking of yourself as less than. Ever have somebody say to you, like, oh my gosh, I really love that shirt, I really like your hair, and you're like, oh, this old shirt, I got it on a discount, or I got it at this place, or I've had it for 10 years. We're always minimizing the value of the things that we have. Or somebody says to you, man, you did a great job on that project. I think that you did a really good job on this thing. I really loved how you spoke up in the boardroom. And you say, well, it was a team effort. Or, yeah, I just threw something together. It's that ability to minimize all the hard work that you've put in. 70% of people typically experience imposter syndrome. I'll be honest with you, over 16 years in business, not having a university degree and having some very large companies in my lifetime, I have definitely experienced imposter syndrome, sitting at a boardroom table with a bunch of individuals who I felt had more reason to be there, more value in being there, more skill sets in being there. Felt what it felt like to have imposter syndrome and just, not think that I had the right to be there. But if you're looking at starting to build a personal brand, you need to get to that space. And I call it the fake it until you make it mentality, which really just means is sometimes we don't believe we deserve the right to have the promotion. Sometimes we don't believe we deserve the right to be in the room and speaking up, but just pretend you do anyway. So I've got 3 tips for you that have 110% worked for me in helping to develop some confidence in believing that I have a right to be in the rooms that I'm in. So number 1 is make a list of 10 things or more that you are more than qualified to do. So ask yourself, what have I accomplished in my life, right? Like maybe you've, been an honors student. Maybe you've, done really well on a specific project and it was your creativity or your innovation that was able to take it to the next level. I think all throughout our lives, we're told to minimize our accomplishments. And so I think in some way that almost perpetuates why so many individuals end up with imposter syndrome. But if you can have a list of 10 or more things that you're really good at, that you're strong in, right? Like for me, I'm a really good connector. I'm a really good communicator. I know that about myself, not only because I believe it, but I've actually gone out and I've had conversations with people who've hired me in the past and asked them for feedback on what they would say about me. And I have a list because on those days where I don't think I deserve to be in the room or I don't believe I should go for that next gig, I go back to my list of things that I'm good at to remind myself that I do deserve the right to be in that room. Number 2, say your name out loud. So you've probably heard of affirmations like, I'm awesome. I'm, the best salesperson in the world, whatever those affirmations are. But LeBron James, which if you don't know who that is a basketball player, would say his name before saying that. So it'd be like, LeBron is awesome. LeBron is the best basketball player in the world. And there's something about saying your own name that, again, maybe it's a bunch of woo-woo and I might be, it could be. But these are individuals and there's a ton of celebrities, very successful athletes that do this. I do it. I usually look at myself in the mirror before I get on and do a speaking engagement or I go for a bid for a new client. Terri-Ann, you're awesome. Terri-Ann, you're the greatest salesperson in the world, whatever, right? So again, probably sounds a little funny, probably feels funny, but it works. And then the third one, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, which is you need to own your accomplishments. When somebody says you've done a good job, accept it. Don't try to minimize it. Don't try to pass it off as it's a team effort. When somebody says, congratulations, to you. Say thank you and own it. And the other thing is you need to decide. That fake it till you make it mentality it's a funny one, but you need to decide that I'm confident. You need to decide that I have the right to have success. You need to decide that you've earned the right to go for the promotion. And again, you're almost tricking your mind that you deserve it so that your mind will not play tricks when you try to go for it. So that's as much as I want to go down the imposter syndrome. I just knew it was something that I wanted to touch on. So how in goodness name are you all going to build a personal brand? So here's the 10 tips. We're going to go deep into each of these to give you a little bit more of an explanation of how to do that. But the 10 tips for developing your personal brand is, number one, you need to figure out who you are. It sounds cliche. We will go a little bit deeper into that, but you need to know who you are. Like, what do you stand for? Number two is, what do you want to be known for? And you better make sure those two are aligned, right? I don't want to figure out who I am over here and then try to pretend, like we all know people do on social media, that I'm somebody different, right? If you see me in my kitchen dancing around and you see me at the grocery store or on a speaking engagement, those three people, which are all me, are aligned. They're the same individual. I'm not trying to be something I'm not when I show up in front of you. I'm the same person for you as I am for other people. And I'm telling you, it makes it so much easier. In my 20s, I used to try to be business Terri-Ann and then mom Terri-Ann and then friends Terri-Ann. And it was complicated because it's so much work to try to be anything but yourself, right? So your personal brand shouldn't be complicated. It shouldn't be hard. It should be just who you are. And that should be a part of all the areas of your life, right? Number three, define your audience. 4, you need to research the desired industry that you're trying to build a personal brand in. For example, for myself is the personal development industry, the business industry, the speaking industry. These are industries that I'm trying to build a personal brand. So when people are out looking for speakers and coaches and personal development leaders, they see me as an expert in that space. I'm not trying to build a personal brand in tech. I'm not trying to build a personal brand in, I don't know, automotive or automotion, right? Like, I'm not trying to build in there. I'm building in my specific industry. The other thing is you need to follow experts in your industry, and I'll explain a little bit more on why. Number 5, ask for informational interviews. I'll expand on that. Number 6, prep an elevator pitch. In other words, if you've never heard what an elevator pitch is, it's if you and I were in an elevator and I decided I wanted to have a conversation with you and we have 45 seconds to have a quick conversation, can you tell me in a succinct way who you are, what you do, what you stand for? That will be memorable so that in the future, I might call on you or talk to you about a potential promotion because you explained just a little bit about who you are and what you stand for. Number 7, embrace events, which is what you're all doing here today, and networking. 8, ask for recommendations and feedback. 9, own and grow your online presence. And 10, remember that your personal brand is not just online. We just sort of quickly talked about the fact of in my kitchen, at the grocery store, and when I'm dealing with my clients, I am the same person, and you need to make sure that that is seamless and it is true. So, number 1, figure out who you are. In order to build a professional personal brand that accurately reflects who you are, where your personal and your professional meshes, you need to get real with yourself. You need to go inward, be introspective, and you need to ask yourself these 6 questions. So, in which areas of work do I excel? In other words, like, what am I good at, right? What motivates me? What excites me? What characteristics have others complimented me on, right? If you were to go ask 3 or 4 people who've worked with you in the past how they would describe you to a complete stranger, what would they say? And yeah, be brave enough to ask those questions. Which projects have others had to help me with repeatedly? In other words, shine a light on areas where maybe you're weak, but you keep trying to play in that sandbox. And those are areas that you might need more help, right? Which roles seem to drain my energy, right? And which projects can I spend hours on without feeling overwhelmed or tired? All of these start to talk about who you are as a person, as a professional. And this starts to depict the type of content that you're going to start putting out on social media, the type of people you're going to connect with. All of this is now starting to create the image of who your personal brand is. What do you want to be known for? So remember, I get to decide who I am, right? The first slide just said, figure out who you are. But now I want to know, what do I want to be known for, right? What do I want other people to remember me for after I leave a room? Because remember, your personal brand is what other people are saying about you when you leave the room. It's more than just a reflection of who you are today. It's sort of a roadmap of where you're headed, right? And we've all heard, that back, I can think about it, like back in high school when they would give, determined to be the most successful. That's because their personal brand that they had created in high school had sort of depicted this roadmap of success, right? And then, the most likely to get in trouble as an adult, or most likely to, whatever, those are part of their personal brand. And so it's important for you to sort of decide, what do you want to be known for? And you've seen it with celebrities. Like some celebrities are known for, being a part of a cause, right? Some people want to be known for innovation. Some people want to be known for, so for me, I want to be known for being the catalyst of change in leaders globally, right? And so every day when I wake up, I try to build onto that personal brand of what do I want to be known for? And it has a lot to do with the things that you're passionate about, has a lot to do with your core values, the things that you value the most, the strengths that you bring to the table. But the thing, sort of like the what you want to do for the world too. So it might be even attached to a charity or something that is bigger than you. Maybe you want to, work with youth or whatever. It's what do I want to be remembered for? And that, along with what you believe of yourself, need to be aligned. Fair? So you need to define your audience. You heard me earlier talk about, for me, for my career, for what I stand for, there are only specific areas that I will show up and speak and train and coach, because those are the industries that make the most sense for me. If you're going to start going on social media and building a brand, on Facebook, there's very specific Facebook groups that are specific to certain industries, certain audience demographics, right? If you want to start really building a personal brand that will give you traction and give you those opportunities that I talked about earlier, you need to craft a personal brand within the audience that you want to build it in. And so if you're in tech, it makes sense to build a personal brand in tech groups. And if you're specific to female tech groups, then that's where you need to be. If you're trying to build a personal brand like me, where you're in the personal development space and leadership development space, well, then you need to be where those individuals are. It's too complicated and convoluted to try to spread yourself everywhere. It's not enough to just create a LinkedIn profile anymore, right? Like there's thousands and millions of individuals on LinkedIn, and I don't know them all, and you don't know them all. But the ones who seem to stand out are typically, for no uncertain reason, is people that you're connected with within your industry. And so imagine if you started to show up on LinkedIn and on other social media sites in a way that targeted the people that you want to talk to, right? That targeted, maybe you talk about the promotions you have. Maybe you talk about the innovative ideas that you have. Maybe you talk about some of the skills that you bring to the table. Or maybe you just start sharing other articles that are specific to your industry, but you then become the hub of information within your industry. But you have to start by defining who it is that I'm trying to talk to. Who are the people that I'm trying to have a conversation with? You need to research your industry and you need to follow the experts. So number one, research your industry, find out what's hot, what's trending. There's hashtags for a reason. What's going on within your industry that other people would want to know about. Figure out who is above you in your industry, experts, influencers, and follow them, see what's going on, comment with them. Because again, if you comment, not just if you comment, it shows that you're paying attention. Now all of a sudden your name shows up. Not only does the person who posts see your name and now you're top of mind to them, but everybody else who liked or commented on that post also sees your name. Again, how do you stay relevant in a world that's just full of competition, right? The only way you do is if you show up on a regular basis. This is usually where people get a little overwhelmed. Well, I have a full-time job, I have a relationship, I have kids, maybe all of these things that are happening in your life. And you're like, how am I going to have time to build a personal brand online? Well, it's not as complicated as you may think. You don't have to show up every single day. What I would say is decide based on your lifestyle, how often you can, right? And maybe that's only once a week, but then just stay consistent, right? If you're consistently showing up once a week, then you'll make a mark. But don't show up 5 days, this week, and then don't show up again for 3 months. You'll not make a mark. You'll not have that impact that you're trying to have in terms of your personal brand, right? So definitely research your industry and find out what's hot, what's happening. Get to know what people are talking about so that you can also be a part of that conversation. In the beginning, maybe you don't want to really be somebody who's sharing your own opinions. Maybe you want to share the opinions of others. That's okay, right? So you got to start somewhere and get comfortable. And follow the experts. And the reason you're going to follow the experts is because they're the people that everyone else is watching. But more so, it leads into my next point, which is ask and book informational interviews. I cannot tell you in any uncertain terms how important this is. So let me share with you my goal for 2021. My goal for 2021 is to be the catalyst of change for 50 Atlantic Canadian female leaders in Atlantic Canada, okay, in 2021. And that's a big goal. That's a big mission for me for 2021. It means a lot to me. There's a lot of purpose attached to it. But when you're taking on something like that, you have to think, well, who do I need to connect with? Like, it's not enough to have a dream and an idea and a goal and think, okay, well, I just got to do all the work myself. The beauty of this virtual world we live in is there's so many people who get excited with you, right? And so whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, whether it's getting a promotion or just knowing what the next big thing is in your industry, it's important to know who the experts are and the influences are, because you can pick up the phone, send them an email and say, hey, can we jump on a virtual coffee call? And can I interview you? Can we have a conversation around this industry? And that's exactly what I've been doing over these last few months. Is I picked up the phone and I called female leaders in Atlantic Canada that I felt were influential, that certainly had influence over me, but were experts. And I asked them for advice, right? There's two reasons you do this. Number one is you actually get really good advice, right? But by nature, people get excited when you ask them for help. They get excited to share their stories with you and share their network with you. And remember that network equals your net worth. Net worth meaning the ability for you to have success. And so these are just some questions that I've asked in the past, but you can come up with your own questions depending on, what it is your purpose is. But you jump on for 30 minutes with these individuals. I'd say 99.9% of the time people say yes to this, because I'm not asking them to buy anything. I'm not asking them to promote me. I'm saying, hey, can you give me some advice, right? I had a friend of mine years ago say, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. And so I just find asking for advice always opens the doors to just so much more lucrative opportunities for me. And one phone call with a potential influencer or expert might connect me with 10 other people who I didn't know I should talk to. But by talking to them, it's helping to move my mission further. So it is so important to pay attention to who the movers and shakers are in your industry as you're trying to grow in your career, in promotion, or just, again, that personal brand, right? So Prepare an elevator pitch. I'm not going to teach you how to do it. Again, you can Google it. There's a bunch of TED Talks on it and a bunch of YouTube videos. But basically, an elevator pitch is the ability for you in a very succinct way to explain who you are and why it matters, right? Don't do, hey, I'm Terri-Ann Richards and I'm a leadership development coach. That's boring and nobody cares. But like, hey, I'm Terri-Ann Richards and I'm trying to dramatically change the lives of 50 Atlantic Canadian female leaders this year. They're like, whoa, okay, I'll remember that. And maybe in a week or a couple days, they'll be having a conversation with an influential leader and they'll be like, oh, I have somebody that you should talk to, Terri-Ann Richards. And then they connect you. Having an elevator pitch, and I know we're not hanging out in elevators very much these days, and it's awkward to talk to complete strangers. But the reality is the world will at some point go back to some new norm. And having conversations with complete strangers is a really good way to build your network. And again, your network equals your net worth. So knowing how to explain who you are and what you stand for in 30 to 60 seconds is super important. Google how to do it. It's really just, how do you make impact, right? Like, how do you be memorable to people who have never met you before? And again, as the world starts opening back up and we're going to live events again and networking functions, that's the way to be memorable. It's not, I'm Terri-Ann and I'm a leadership development coach. Nobody will remember that, right? So embrace networking. I know there are a few introverts on this call. It's always the case. Truth be told, I am actually an ambivert. So there's extroverts, there's introverts, and then there's the middle. I'm the middle. I do not get my energy from hanging out with a crowd. Once the crowd is done, because I like this, then I need to like go take a nap or like sit down on my chair and read a book and just be quiet. So it has nothing to do with being an extrovert or an introvert. It has everything to do with the fact that all of us are ambitious and we want to do great things with our life. Whatever your version of success is in your life, a lot of it depends on the relationships you have, and the opportunities that you want or seem to want in the future have a lot to do with the people that you know. And so networking and meeting new people is super important. When you go to a function in the future, do not just talk to the people you know. Go and talk to complete strangers. Yes, walk up to them, say, hey, my name is Terri-Ann. How are you? Tell me about yourself, right? Tell me more about what you love to do. Why are you passionate about it? And get to know everything about them. Why? Because people love to talk about themselves. And two, because at the end of that conversation, you're going to ask them for a business card and you're going to message them, just like that industry expert interview I talked about. You're going to message them and say, hey, I met you the other day at XYZ event. I'd love to jump on a virtual coffee call with you and learn a little bit more about you, but also share about myself. And again, if you don't have a business, it's not the point. People want to meet new people. This is how we build that awesome personal brand that opens the doors for more opportunities and more success in your life than if you didn't have that network, right? Ask for recommendations and feedback. So we've all seen recommendations on LinkedIn. If you have a Facebook page, there's a reviews section. If you're somebody who has those, ask for referrals, ask for recommendations and testimonials. Social proof is a real big thing. It's not enough that I think I'm awesome and my personal brand says I'm awesome. It actually matters that Julio says, I really like the way that she presents, right? If that is on my LinkedIn or on my Facebook page, all of a sudden people are paying a little bit more attention. So having recommendations, whether you're an entrepreneur, a leader, or you're somebody within an organization, if you've done a great job on a project, when it's still hot, when people are still thinking about it, go and send a private message to whoever was the leader, a part of that, and say, hey, based on this project, based on this work that I just did, can you give me feedback? Can you give me a recommendation on LinkedIn? Can you give me a recommendation, via email so you can share on your social media? And yes, toot your own horn. It's okay. Because again, if you never tell people how great you are, how will they ever know? Right? And so the world is super busy and it's super chaotic and there's so many things happening on social media. But if I'm looking for a graphic designer, do you know what the first thing I do? And you can go look on my Facebook page, is what I just did the other day. I go to my tribe and I say, who's the best social media or the best graphic designer that you know? And the social proof shows up because all of my peers say, oh, it's XYZ person because I worked with them and they did this. And that's how I go and I reach out to the graphic designer because of the brand that they've built around themselves. The personal brand that human has is the reason why they get my business. It's not because I Googled graphic designers. I don't do that anymore. And most people don't, because I want to know that there's a personal connection in the person that I choose. Feedback. How do I know? How do I grow if I don't know what other people think of me? This is a tough one. It's a hard one to learn, but once you start the momentum, it becomes easier. So if I know in employment, you get, reviews every quarter or every 6 months or every year, and that's fine. But more than that, you want to talk to people who work alongside of you, people who maybe you lead, right? And just say, like, how do I show up as a leader? If you were to explain me or describe me to other people, what would you say? Where do you think I need to grow? What would you say are some of my weaknesses? You have to be willing to listen, right? We have 2 ears for a reason. You have to be willing to listen, but don't get defensive. Don't take it personal, even though it is personal, but take it, go sit down with it and think, okay, this is the perception that other people have of me. And remember earlier when we were talking about that reinvention, 8 different companies over 16 years, you can reinvent yourself over and over again. And that's completely up to you. But you cannot reinvent yourself if you don't have the knowledge to do it, right? And so it's super important to know what other people think of you. How would other people describe you, right? My daughter was here last night and we were doing her new resume. She's applying for a job. And the job asked for 2 references, right? And I said, do you have 2 references? And she looked at me and she goes, well, I wonder what this person would say about me. And I thought, well, you don't know? Because in my world, I would have already asked. And she says, well, no. And I said, well, pick up the phone and call her right now and ask her if she would give you a good recommendation. Because the reality is, if somebody wouldn't give you a good recommendation, there's a reason. And now you need to fix it. You need to fix why they don't have a good perception on your personal brand. Now, let me be clear, you can't fix stupid. So if somebody doesn't like you because they're jealous or because they're just not nice people, let's just put those people over into another bucket. But for 98% of the population, most people are just good people. And sometimes we've rubbed them the wrong way because we haven't shown up in our good, authentic self. So let's change that narrative by showing up differently. But the only way you can is by asking for feedback. Okay? Grow your online presence. If you are not Googleable, you should be. So have a good LinkedIn, be consistent on LinkedIn. If you do have social media and it's not good, clean it up. Make it so that it's something that a potential employer, you're okay with them seeing it. Your grandmother is okay. If you have kids, your young kids, it's okay. Like, make sure that the way that you show up online is exactly how you want people to perceive you, right? That 6 degrees of separation. Anytime I've looked up a potential employee, even if I'm not connected with them, I can typically find somebody that is, and I'll just message them and say, hey, what do you think of so-and-so? And they'll take some screenshots, maybe not, and let me know what they think. So just remember, even though I'm not your friend on social media, there's always a way that I can look you up, right? And so make sure that your social media depicts who you really are and that personal brand that you really want to have. And then remember that your personal brand is not just online. It is everywhere that you show up, right? So if you go into a room and you're really peeved off because somebody did something to your kid got kicked out of Little League and you scream at someone, that's now a part of your personal brand. That girl loses her temper, right? So make sure the way that you show up in every aspect of your life is the way that you want people to perceive you, because that all encapsulates your personal brand. There's 2 books that I recommend. Make Your Mark in the Workplace. It's by James S.B. Obe. And I Am My Brand, How to Build Your Brand Without Apology by Kubi Springer. Both of these books are really, really good if you're into reading. I think they're both on Audible too, so you can either read the actual book or you can, buy a paperback or whatever. So that's the end of my presentation. I would love to open it up if you have questions, thoughts, all of that stuff. The other thought to put this up. I am a leadership development coach and I work with leaders and entrepreneurs globally. And one of the things I love to do is help people put a strategy in place. So maybe the strategy is how to build a personal brand. If you give me feedback, which I love feedback, you go to this link. It's a tinyurl.com, why personal brand. It takes you 5 minutes to give me feedback, rate me and tell me whether I was good, bad, or ugly. And I will give you an automatic free 30 minutes with me. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm going to give you a ton of value. So yeah, that's that. If there are any questions, I would love to answer it. You can come on and use your voice. You can take your video off, or you can ask it in the chat.
Awesome. Anyone has any questions for Terri-Ann? All right.
Hi, Terri-Ann. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Honestly, I loved your speech today and bringing up thoughts about personal branding and how can I introduce myself to the community that I'm working at is a big thing for me. But there is always a fear about, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? The syndrome that you talked about, I can't remember the name.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't realize that what was that before, and I Googled it and I realized, well, that's totally correct. Like, I feel I'm in the same shoes. I'm that person, you know. So how do you approach your fear? How do you know that you're doing the right thing?
You know what, so here's what I know for sure is nothing I've ever done has been perfect the first time or the 10th time, right? Mm-hmm. I think about like my years in business, and about 4 years ago, I started to do live events, right? In-person events. And part of my marketing strategy was to show up and do live videos on Facebook, and live videos I had never done before. If I showed you my very first live video when I showed up in front of the world, my face was like this far from the screen. My mic wasn't on, so I talked for the first 4 minutes without my mic on. I made all the mistakes, but that doesn't matter, right? Like, the whole idea is to fail forward. If you put thought into showing up in your community and just being like, hey, I'm Sharif, and here I am, and here's what I believe in, and here's what's, interesting to me, you can't break the internet, right? Like, you just can't. And as long as you're showing up as yourself, mm-hmm. and, you're not trying to be something you're not, people are going to embrace you. And those that don't matter, right? Like, I just kind of put a block to them, because there will always be people who don't like us, and that's okay. But you can't break it. And so you'll get out and your heart will beat really fast, and, you'll have the hot sweats, and you'll show up and people will embrace you, and you go, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then you'll do it again. And that wasn't so bad. And then by nature, it just becomes easier.
So I gotta ask you, like, so even after all these years, you still get the heartbeats and like the hot sweats and all?
Yes. Okay. Like 5 seconds before I came on with you guys, I was like, why do I do this? This is scary. They're all strangers to me. But I also love it, right? Like, I love teaching, I love speaking, I love presenting. But yeah, 100%. Tony Robbins talks about that. Like, he said, if you don't get nervous when you're doing something great, there's something wrong. So I think we're human, right? And the feeling of nervousness and excitement is the exact same feeling. So I just tell myself, I must be excited all the time when I'm nervous. So just tell yourself, I'm excited. I'm not nervous. I'm excited.
Well, I will try to convince myself with that, but that's a great approach, and thank you so much for your advice.
No problem. I see a question from Priscilla. How can you balance between your career and being a busy mom? Oh gosh, if I had a answer, 1,000 answers for every time somebody asks that question. So the truth of the matter is, it's all about priorities. This is something I talk about a lot with people. I teach an entire effective personal productivity program for 6 months to bring people up to that level. But the reality is, I did it wrong a long time ago. I used to work like 70, 80 hours a week. I had 2 young children. I was about 26 years old at the time. And they saw the back of my head more than the front of my face. And I'll tell you that that's not the way that life was supposed to be lived, right? Nobody gets to the end of their days and goes, you know what? I'm so excited that I worked 80 hours a week, right? Nobody says that. People say, I wish I would have spent more time with my family, with my kids, with my spouse, with my friends, doing the things that I love. So number one is, if it's important to you, i.e., yourself, right? Put the mask on yourself first. Your spouse or your kids or your friends, they need to be in your calendar first. Anything that's important should be in there first, and everything else should be booked around it. The other thing is, you need to learn to say no more. We live in a world where so many people want us, and there's a lot of community boards and all of these things to be a part of. But you have only 168 hours in a week, and you need to be able to sleep and take care of yourself and hopefully work out and eat and all of those things, and then fit in the people that matter the most, and then work and all of that. So you have to be able to say no to more things. But I would say the number one thing is, block out in your schedule at the end of every month, like the end of this month for April, you should block out where you're working out, what time or what day of the week you're hanging out with your family, and make it a non-negotiable. It's sort of like, if showing up for work by 8 a.m. is a non-negotiable, you'll lose your job. Tell yourself that not showing up for your spouse or your children or yourself it's a non-negotiable. The grass is greener where you water it. So if I want an awesome relationship with my partner, I need to water that. If I want an awesome relationship with my kids, I need to water that. Does that make sense? That answer your question, Priscilla, I hope? Good. Any other questions, guys? Oh, my mind seems empty when I want to start a conversation with a stranger. How can I improve it? Okay, this is awesome. So I run a networking group. We have about 700 members, and I get this question all the time. Come up with 3 different types of questions that you ask people. Here's the deal. People love to talk about themselves. And so if you have like 3 questions that are just in the back of your mind that you will ask everybody, right? Because nobody will know that you ask everybody. If you just ask everybody the same questions, like, hey, Priscilla, what is it that you do? So she tells you, I'm a network marketer. Okay, cool. What are you passionate about? What's your big goal for this year? So then she shares a little bit of her goal. What's your big challenge for this year? Or, what's something that you do for fun? And then from there, more questions will just come, right? Because people will talk about something. And you're like, oh, my sister, my brother, I did that when I was younger. And all of a sudden you find out where you relate, where the common ground is. But just come up with like 3 or 4 questions that you just ask everybody and just start. It's like Nike said, just do it. And then again, over time, you build that muscle where, you're not as nervous as you were before. Fair? Hopefully that answers your question. Awesome. Any other questions, guys? And feel free to ask it via video as well. Awesome. Good. So yeah, so I would absolutely love your feedback. I talked about the tips of building a personal brand is asking for feedback. That link there, I'd encourage you all. And you can say in the feedback whether or not you want a goal setting strategy with me. You don't need to have one if you don't want one, but I am pretty cool to hang out with. But your feedback matters. If you think that I did a great job, that's awesome. If you think that there's some work that I can do as a presenter or some things that I probably should have talked about that I didn't, I need to know that, because that's how I get better. That's how I improve my personal brand, right? And if you know anybody out there that needs a coach or wants to hang out with someone as cool as me, tell them about me. Help me raise the roof on my own personal brand. And if there's anything that I can help you with, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a note, say that you were here today. And if there's something I can help you with, if there's people that I can connect you with, 100% I will do that, because again, that network equals your net worth, and you'll help my net worth grow, but I'll also help yours. So I totally appreciate you guys being here today. You were a good crowd. Love the questions. And a lot of times when you end a presentation like this, you'll have a question like, shoot, why didn't I ask her that? Don't feel like you can't send me a message on LinkedIn and ask me that question. I'm a pretty personable person. You're not going to rub me the wrong way. You're not going to, offend me. This is what I love to do. I love helping people, being the catalyst of change for people to kind of realize their full potential. So if you have questions after this session, send me a quick note. Make sense? Awesome. Awesome. So I feel like this all is like to wrap up at like 12:15, and then I think that there's a lunch. I'm sure you all have your agenda for the day, so you really know what's like actually happening. Oh yes, so Julio actually has put down the link. So to navigate back to the main stage after your lunch, you click that link right there. And like I said, anyone wants to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. And I hope you guys all have an awesome, blessed day. Awesome. Thank you, Julio. It was great.
Terri-Ann, it was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to peace out now. I'm going to go have my lunch, and I hope to connect with you all on LinkedIn. Bye.